What's up, guys? I'm BTC. With the brand new Winter Wonderland event, we also got that huge balance patch that nerfed a lot of the barriers, but what we got on the live server today is not the exact same patch that was on the PTR. Blizzard went ahead and made some more changes before moving it over to the live version of the game. So I'm going to quickly run through all of the changes and talk a little bit about how this is going to affect the game. So the first thing is that there was a general change to armor. So rather than reducing damage by 2, it's now going to reduce it by 5, which is basically reverting it to how it was before. You know, they ended up nerfing it during GOATs because it was causing a problem, but now they've changed it. So any character with armor is now going to be significantly more durable. That means that Brigitte's ultimate and her repair pack are also a lot better now because they can absorb a lot more damage. But moving on to the individual characters, the first one is Irisa. So the thing is that she went from having 200 armor up to 250. The protective barrier, the health of it was reduced from 900 down to 600, and the fortify cooldown was decreased from 10 seconds down to 8 seconds. However, one of the changes that was on the PTR that does not seem to be in the patch notes is her movement speed. Now, on the PTR, it said that she is now going to move a little bit faster when she's attacking, like the movement speed reduction. However, as I'm looking at this right now, even though it's not in the patch notes, this absolutely feels like she is moving at the same speed that she was on the PTR. I would have to run a side-by-side comparison, but this definitely feels way faster than it was on the previous version of the live server. So even though that is not in the patch notes, it does still appear to be that. Now, I don't know if this means that they accidentally didn't include it in the patch notes, or if they meant to remove it from the game and they just didn't, but in either case, it's still there, even though it's not in the patch notes. The next character is Sigma. The experimental barrier, the health was reduced from 1500 down to 900. That is a massive, massive nerf. It does still have the 1 second cooldown, which I really don't like. It feels really kind of clumsy and clunky when I'm using it. I would rather have them go back to the old version where there was a little bit of a delay when you're throwing it out, but there was no cooldown when you pulled it back. So it wasn't like you could just instantly throw the barrier out constantly. There still was a bit of a delay. Just the older version felt a little bit better. Anyways, the regeneration rate on this was also reduced from 150 to 120 per second. So again, massive nerf to the health. Also, pretty substantial nerf to the regeneration of it. So you don't really want to have this barrier out there all the time now. You just want to have it throw out there, block some of the damage, and then recall it so that it can start to regen. I don't think that Sigma can be played in a primary tank position at all anymore. Or if he can, it's going to be something weird that we probably haven't seen before. I mean, you could try to run Sigma with like a Zarya backing him up, but I don't know, that it just might not work. Next up is going to be with the Kinetic Grasp. So the cooldown was reduced from 13 seconds down to 10 seconds. So this is going to kind of make up a little bit for that decrease in the barrier strength. But remember, the Kinetic Grasp can absorb pretty much all incoming damage. It's a much smaller area than the defense matrix that D.Va has, but it can still, absorb all of it, that 100%. So, and of course, it also was changed so that the damage to shield gain, the ratio was increased from 40 to 60%. So it means that you're going to be able to absorb more damage often because of the lower cooldown, and you get more bonus health from it. So that's, again, to make up for the shield thing. Now, the next one is with Reinhardt, and this also had a change from the PTR. So the barrier health was reduced from 2,000 down to 1,600, which is a bit of a nerf to it, but he still has the best, most durable barrier in the game. and also the movement penalty was reduced from 50% down to 30%. Now, on the PTR, it was down to 25%, but, I mean, again, I don't know if this is them with the patch notes being wrong. I mean, it feels like the same speed it was on the PTR. So again, I don't know if they meant to include it, or if they just messed up the patch notes, or what. But even with that barrier, you are still just moving along really fast. So one of the new strategies with Reinhardt, again, you don't want to just stand in the choke point anymore and just hold up the barrier. That's just not going to work anymore. I mean, it's still going to be a little bit effective with Rein because his barrier health is still up there. But the better strategy is now just put up the barrier and then just charge on right through. Just go right through, try to get your team advanced as much as you can. No more sit in one spot, no more bunker, none of that stuff. Next up is Moira. She got a nerf to her healing. The Kinetic Grasp healing was reduced from 4 down to 3.25, or 80 healing per second down to 65. They felt that she was just healing too much, and this is combined with some of the other nerfs that she's just gotten, and it was because she was so popular during the double barrier. But this is one of those weird situations. She's only good because of the double barrier, and now that it's going away, now that everything is shifting around, is she still even going to be that useful anymore? I mean, at the lower bracket, probably, but in the upper bracket, you're almost certainly going to be better off using Ana or Baptiste or something rather than using Moira. I mean, the reason why you would use Moira in the double barrier is because she could stay close with her team and just heal everybody while they were grouped up. But with all of these changes to barriers, people are going to be more and more spread out. Like, nobody's going to group up anymore. Like, you still have to group up, but you're not going to be, like, super condensed in that one spot anymore. So, I don't know. Like, it feels like they're nerfing a character that's not even going to be used all that much anymore. Next up is D.Va, the Defense Matrix. Cooldown was decreased from 2 seconds down to 1.5. Just means you can activate it a little bit faster. Obviously, with the reduction in the strength of all the barriers, D.Va and other characters in the tank category are now going to be a lot better and optional choices. So this is just going to be a little bit better, you know? Rather than having to rely on the barrier constantly, you can now use D.Va's Defense Matrix a little bit more often. So a little bit better of a character, also with the armor changes, because she has quite a bit of armor on the mech, so obviously a little bit better in a couple of different areas. Widowmaker got a nerf. The grappling hook cooldown was increased from 10 to 12 seconds. This is just because they found that she was able to escape a little too easily when someone like a Winston or a Genji or something was coming after him. So they just wanted to slow it down a little bit, which seems pretty okay to me. Like, I don't really see that as being that massive of a deal. I do kind of wish they would do something a little bit more with the Venom, though. It just feels really lackluster. Also, her ultimate probably could use a little bit of a change, too. Next up is Tor Buren. He got a buff to his overload. The cooldown was decreased from 12 down to 10 seconds. So this is going to give him a little bit more survivability because you get the armor. Also, the attack rate is increased. Now, another thing with Tor Buren, of course, is that because the armor is now better, again, even more survivability. But I also want to kind of put something out there with the turret. With the massive reduction in the strength of the barriers, I think the turret just got a little bit better. Now, at the upper bracket, I still think it's going to be more of a nuisance than anything. However, in the lower bracket, Tor Buren might end up being a little bit more annoying, a little bit stronger than he was before. In addition to all the other stuff, just simply because the turret is now going to be able to directly damage the enemies instead of just, you know, hitting the barriers and doing kind of like empty damage. So that's something to keep in mind. Next up is Genji. Oh, okay, so Genji had his ammo increased from 24 to 30. this is going to do pretty much nothing. All of the problems that Genji has are still going to be there, right? He is a character that was... See, the barriers were never the issue for Genji, because he can just go around them. The problem with Genji is the massive amount of healing that is currently in the game. And he just doesn't really have the huge burst potential to take down the enemies. Really, Genji was designed at a time when healing, and I've talked about this before, he was designed at a time when healing was really, really low, right? All you had was Lucio, Zen, and Mercy, so there was kind of low healing in the game. And the kind of chip damage that Genji does would work, because you could just chip down the enemy. But now, with the huge amounts of healing from Ana and Baptiste and Moira, now, you know, it's just a lot more difficult for the character. This change specifically, the ammo, it does absolutely nothing. There's no change for Genji whatsoever. It's not going to have any impact. Now, whether or not he's used, that's another story, but this change, this buff, is essentially worthless. And finally, we have Zarya, who got a couple of nice little buffs. So the first thing is that the secondary attack, the radius, was increased from 2 to 2.5, meaning she just can do a little bit more damage in a bigger area. And also, the cost was reduced from 25 down to 20, which means she now gets 5 attacks from full to empty instead of just the 4. So overall, some nice little damage increase potential for Zarya. And also, I think with the massive amount of nerfs to the barriers, Zarya is also going to be in a much better position. She's now going to be able to do a lot more damage, and she doesn't necessarily need to have that barrier out in front. It certainly does help. But also, this means that Zarya now will work with other characters as well. It's possible to run a Zarya with an Irisa now, right? Because before, it wouldn't really work all that well, because Irisa would just stay behind the barrier all the time and would never take damage. But now that the barrier has such low health, you have to be a lot more aggressive, and once the barrier goes down, you now have that opportunity to throw that bubble on the Irisa and build up your charge in a very similar way to what you would do with Reinhardt. And also, her potential combo with Reinhardt is now even better, because now you can move a lot faster with that Reinhardt who's got the shield up. You put a Lucio in the mix and it's going to be even better than that. Now, as far as her working with Sigma, well, it used to be pretty decent. Now, it might not be. Again, I don't know if you can even try to run Sigma in that primary position anymore. I just don't think he has enough defensive potential to really do that. Now, overall, so what does all of this mean? Well, the thing is, that whole kind of sit in one spot, the bunker style of play, just is not going to work anymore. You cannot do that. Also, you have to keep in mind that because the barriers are a lot weaker, and you're going to have a lot lower of an uptime on just the barriers in general, that means you need to start using cover way, way, way more. You can't just stand in the open and expect the barrier to protect you. You've got to stay behind those corners, pop out, do your damage, and then go back. And this is something that people are going to have to get used to, because for I don't even know how long, right? We had the double barrier. Before that, we had the bunker with just Irisa Hog. Before that, we had goats. So we've had this huge amount of barrier protection for so long that people are going to have to get used to it. Now, I do think that there's a very good possibility that Dive makes a comeback, because without all those barriers, right, it's going to be a very good position for the very fast-moving, the mobile, kind of aggressive Dive comp to come back. There's also some other stuff that could work. Like I said, the Irisa and the Zarya combo. Irisa Reinhardt is also, Reinhardt Zarya is going to be very good. Also, actually, that is a possibility. You could have Reinhardt Irisa as well. I'm going to make another video where I go over all of these different new tank combinations that can work. And there's just the biggest takeaway from all of this, because even other DPS, like characters like Soldier 76 and Ashe, and some of the other ones that really haven't been getting a whole lot of play, they now have a lot of potential now because the barriers are going away. I don't necessarily say that they're going to be in the meta. At this point, no one knows what the meta is going to be, and anyone who tells you that they know what it's going to be, they're just lying, okay? They don't have a clue, all right? Don't believe them, okay? No one knows what the meta is going to be right now because there is so much stuff, and I think a really good thing about all of this stuff right now with this patch is that there is so much potential going on. There's so much room for creativity because essentially everything that we've had about the game up until now is just gotten thrown out the window, right? Like, for so long, barriers have been this huge, huge force in the game, basically preventing all kinds of stuff from happening. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you had the most amazing accuracy ever on a character like Soldier or McCree or even Widow, right? All it takes is one guy holding right-click on Reinhardt, and he can protect his team from your damage. And, you know, that can be very frustrating. Or, you know, Irisa just throws down the barrier, one click, and it just kind of wipes away all of your accuracy, no matter how good it is. But that stuff, again, is going away. There's going to be a lot more skill-based stuff, which I think is going to be great, and a lot more flexibility. As I said, I will be making another video going over a lot of these potential combos and all that sort of stuff. But those are the changes. As I said, some of the things in the patch notes are different. I don't know whether or not they plan to change it or if it was just an accident and they didn't include it, and what the situation is. But from what I can tell, Irisa and Reinhardt are moving as fast as they were on the PTR, even though the patch notes say otherwise. So who knows if they change it? We'll have to wait and see if there's any clarification coming up. So what do you guys think about all of these changes? What kind of character comps do you think are going to be the best? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always, always blame the controller because it's never your fault.